I got tired of walking around with a mask on, smiling but my heart singing sad songs. Yeah, I was living for myself, I was dead wrong till I got the call, no cell phone. Man, you talking to the real me.
Scott, thank you so much for coming on, mate. In terms of the Uncompromised podcast itself, it's relatively new. I'm not expecting you to have any kind of clue about what it is that I do, who I work with and stuff. So to give you an insight, I basically rebranded in January, December time to really specifically niche down to working with guys who have perhaps been in a position where they're struggling to escape self-destructive habits and they can't get into shape or embrace the next phase of their life based on the fact that they're struggling on an identity level. And I wanted to do this podcast and get guys like yourself, you know, coaches, nutritionists, therapists, elite athletes, to really give an insight to discuss things inside and outside of the fitness industry that are probably unspoken about for a lot of guys, you know, whether it's, you know, work-related stress, drugs, alcohol, coping mechanisms, all that kind of stuff. And really just speak to guys who have gone from one relative setback in their life to relative success in their eyes, whether it's financial, athletic performance, you know, business scaling, whatever it is. So when I saw your story, I was just like, I'll get this guy on. So, you know, for those that are watching, Scott is, I've got written down, former Financial Times stock exchange executive. Is that right?
Yeah, FTSE 100. So I didn't work in the stock exchange, but I worked for one of the biggest 100 companies in the country, I guess, and was an exec there, and still do, to be honest. Still, it's an MD of a $500 million consultancy.
Wow.
So
we've got that. We've got Scott, the best-selling author. We've got Scott, the high-performance coach, and then Scott, the elite endurance athlete. So we've got a lot to get through, but really, I usually start these podcasts with just asking, in terms of like the word uncompromised, and as a man, as a business owner, as a coach, you know, what does that really mean to you? I always like to get everyone's insight on what that means to them individually.
I liked it, right? I was having a little look before we came on, and the word uncompromised came up obviously on your Instagram and things, and I was like, that's a great word to kind of describe you in your, not just in your truest sense, because I think people sometimes think, oh, the real me isn't that great, and that's why they hide the real me. Mm-hmm. But you're uncompromised in the sense of you're your real self, and you don't comply to all the limitations that everybody else is putting on you. You're just like, actually, God knows what I'm capable of, and I'm just going to try. I'm not going to compromise myself by putting limitations on or saying what I can and can't do and all this. I'm just going to live to be the best that I possibly can be. Great word. I'm gonna steal it, to be honest.
I appreciate that.
You need to use that more.
Yeah, it's kind of what I wanted to get going with in terms of, I spent quite a while thinking of one word that can reflect what I'm wanting the guys to kind of embody on an identity level. And like for every guy, that's a different, you know, success is different to every guy, right? And in the program, we look at guys on a personal level in terms of identity, the physique side of stuff, you know, your performance, and then profession. Yeah. So for you, mate, was there a kind of a time where I guess you were compromising yourself with regards to a time in your life where you were living where you were putting limits on yourself?
Yeah, big time. I think, you know, my kind of, not to go into too much detail, but I guess I was kind of, everything was going great through my 20s. And I think you live as a teenager and as a kid growing up and then into your 20s, you're young enough that I was always imagining massive things happening, right? I was like, wherever I was just always dreaming of these amazing things that were going to happen. And then you get through your 20s and you get closer to your 30s, and then it's like, oh, maybe some of this stuff might not happen, right? Like, and it was, for me, I remember there was certain moments. I always remember, this is a weird one, where Michael Owen retired, the footballer, right, at about 30. And I think I'm the same age, or give or take a year with Michael Owen. And I was like, oh, I might not make it as a footballer. I'm 30 at this point, right? And I'm terrible at football. But I suddenly became like, all this stuff that I just hoped was going on was starting to slip away from me. So I found my 30s like really hard. in some ways it was the best years because financially things really worked out for me in terms of I was doing great at work. I got married, I had kids, all of that, almost fundamentals was going great. But I was also falling into the trap of, right, I'm a dad, so I need to act like a dad, be a bit more boring, be a bit more stay at home. I need to work, 9 till 6, find it stressful. It was all unconscious things that I started taking on. And then when I was like mid-30s, probably 6-7 years ago now, I took a job. I had a great job working for BT. I loved it, worked with amazing people. And then I had to get home. I was working all over the world and my kids were really young. They were like 1 and 2. I was like, this is madness. I can't keep doing this. And so I took a job that was at home in Edinburgh. And it felt like I went from working in like the Premier League to being in the conference or something, right? And that's not a slight at the people or the business or whatever. It was just when you go from that environment of the best people in the world to the best people in your city, it's not the same level. And I thought my problem was, it was an easy job, it was more money, it was ticked every box, I was at home. And the problem I thought was because I was just worrying about stuff because I was now a dad, right? And I had kids and I had a mortgage and I had all this stuff. But actually what my problem was I wasn't living my life at a level that I wanted to be at. I was doing a job that I could do with my eyes closed, but I wasn't pushing myself or really trying to grow in any sense. I was doing the exact opposite. And that over the space of a couple of years, like I ended up with anxiety. I'd never had anxiety before. Never had that. Was just not and I just one day was like, I can't go in. I can't make a decision. And I was 3 months out the game. And then it was horrible. And I always remember thinking like, that was my kind of insight into mental health and thinking like, I wouldn't wish this on my like worst enemy. This is just horrible when you don't feel like you're in control of your own mind.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, it was horrible, but that I kind of then got back into my fitness, knuckled down on, right, I need something. And it was then a journey from that point on to be like, actually, I can do whatever I want, right? There's no need for me to fall into these kind of norms of society that's, you just become the dad taxi and you just become the slightly overweight dad bod thing. And and actually your whole life revolves around working and kids. Like my kids are the most important thing in the world to me, but there is no, like, I can fit more into the hours in a day.
Yeah.
It's not that I sacrifice anything with my kids, but
that's amazing. It's like there's clearly a big identity shift for you from maybe changing the career path and getting to a point where there's a little bit of like frustration there with like, kind of, is this it? And I speak to a lot of guys that go through that because I'm 29 now and I definitely relate to a lot of what you were saying when you're getting into like later 20s and you start to feel that, because I think there's something romantic about your 20s in the sense of like naivety where you just think like you can conquer the world as a young guy that's tasted success in some kind of relative form.
Yeah.
But that success, if it's not paired with fulfillment, is a very strange and lonely place, and that's something that I have experienced myself. I think for you, like, when you were going through that period of, say, like going into work with anxiety and stuff, how was that impacting you across different spectrums of your life?
It just kind of creeps into everything, right? Like I became really, really indecisive, and that creeps into then your relationship, right? And especially when kids are young and things, like my wife would be like, what are we going to do about this? Or do you want to go and do that? And I'd be like, this feels like you're asking me to solve world hunger here.
Yeah.
And, you stop being present because you're just worried about all this other stuff that's going on in the back of your head. And I I always think the word, like, people talk about being present, and I never really understood what that meant. But I think I was always either living in the past of going, oh my God, why did I do this? Or why did I do that? Or I was living in the future of, well, if I do this, then this might happen. But if I do that, then something else might happen. And if I do X, then, oh, and I'd be like, Jesus, my head would be all over here instead of just
Like,
all right, wait a minute, you're standing in the park playing. Like,
it's like procrastination by overstimulation almost, isn't it? Like, you just got so many thoughts going on. Yeah.
And so you just become this kind of like bad, rubbish version of yourself, right? Like, I'm a very patient person. Like, anger was never my thing. Like, it wasn't like I got snappy. It was always just like, I just wasn't really engaging with, I was just very sort of withdrawn. And that's, people would be like, that's not you, Scott. But I'd just be like, I just need to know, I need some certainty in my life, and I need some kind of security. And the more that you chase that, the less that you get of it.
Yeah. What would you say?
Yeah, it kind of creeps into all points.
That, like, in terms of that transition when you went from obviously being in that workplace, feeling anxious, all that kind of stuff, and you kind of had that switch where you're like getting back into your fitness and you're like, no, I can do this. There's no limits. What was the turning point for that? Like, how did that come about?
It's probably two things. The first one was I knew exercise was this endorphin thing, right? And I'd never been super fit in my life, but I'd always enjoyed sport, right? And I realized I'd just stopped it all, right? I was like, I'm playing golf and it's not going to keep me that fit. So I went to the boxing gym near to me and just said to the guy, I sort of knew him. I went to school with his wife, and I was like, look, I need some one-to-one stuff here so that I've got nowhere to hide, and just put me in that. For me, I had to be in quite a raw environment. I didn't want all the swanky stuff because, to be honest, there was so much of it was worrying about money and things. If I was in this really posh, swanky gym, I'd be like, oh, geez, this feels like I'm spending money on stuff that I shouldn't be spending it on, and all this kind of thing. So I like the whole spit and sawdust of a boxing gym. Like, it's
There's a raw feeling to it.
And that, totally, I loved that, and I still do. So that kind of got me back on the journey. And then, but I knew nothing about nutrition or whatever else. So I was still a bit overweight, and I went on holiday took the kids to Disneyland in France, and the kids were still young at this point, but they must have taken a photo of me, probably by accident. I was building a sandcastle. I could just see, I saw at the dinner that night, I was looking through my phone to see the photos we'd taken, and I was like, oh, that is not me. Who's that guy in that photo?
You had a fuck this moment.
I said to my wife, yeah. I said to my wife, I was like, you never told me I got like that. She was like, well, she was like, you're not that fat, and I was like, I am. This needs sorted. And she was working with a woman, Leanne Conroy, at the time. And she said, no, it's Joe's wife.
Joe's wife, of course, yeah.
Joe Parrish's wife, yeah. So she was working with Leanne because she was kind of going through her own journey of like post-kids and all this kind of thing, trying to get back in shape. And she said, oh, I think Leanne's got, it was a boyfriend at the time. She said, why don't you go and ping Joe? I went, right, I'm going to ping him now. And I was like, hi, mate, I'm on holiday. I'll be back on Monday. I need help. Let's go.
I love that.
We had a call.
Straight into the point. Just
that was it.
Do it.
Yeah. It was like, and then we had a call the next day, and it was funny. He always laughs because he's like, he said to me, how many calories do you eat or something like that? And I said, like, mate, I have no idea what a calorie is.
How long ago was this?
No idea. Probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, I had no idea.
Not that long ago then. For those watching, we'll get to your achievements and how epic they are. But you'll see when we get there, the grand scheme of timeline wise, it's amazing to see what you've achieved in that space of time. Like, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is cool. And it's probably, I genuinely don't say it to brag. I genuinely try and tell people, like, it's amazing what you can do in quite a short period of time. There's a great saying that is, most people overestimate what they can do in a month and underestimate what they can do in 5 years. Right. And it's like, I wasn't perfect at the start, right? You know, I had all your normal excuses of, sorry, I missed 2 sessions this day because usually I just didn't plan them. And nutrition wise, I'd be like, oh, I'm over calories because I had a night out and never thought about the fact that I had this massive binge and then I ate loads on the Sunday to try and recover.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, it was that moment. And I phoned Joe. I says, on Monday, I'm coming back. I need everything, what I need to do nutritionally. Give me some workouts and I'm going hard or going home kind of thing. And yeah, you know, you have that initial spike of motivation of, yeah, let's go. And then after a couple of months, you're like, where's my 6-pack and pecs? Like, why am I not ripped? You know, but you start to realize that, yeah, these changes, it's just consistency. And Joe, for me, was brilliant at managing my expectations throughout that and sort of saying, yeah, you know, because like most people, it's, you know, 90-day transformations of, right, you're like, oh, brilliant, I'll look like the cover model, right?
See these before and afters and you think that's going to be me, and then there's no time frame attached to them. It could be a 2-year transformation that someone's put up, right? I think
Totally.
I agree. Joe's awesome at managing expectations. So when you were obviously, and then did you get qualified as a coach along that process of working with Joe then?
Yeah, I kind of just I started to get a bit of a bug for that. I'd always been coaching from a mindset perspective, particularly in my work in the business kind of side of things. That had probably been how I'd made my name. Was I was good at going into big businesses and finding out what the problem was, but I was better at figuring out, like sitting down with the CEO and saying, why are you not making this decision? I've given you all the facts, which is you need to get rid of this business, you need to close down this, and they were often difficult messages that nobody wanted to hear. And you think the CEOs of these big organizations will always just go, all right, cool, that's what we've got to do. So they're decisive and they take action. But they're not, right? They're just fragile like us, you know, as like so many, and they'll hum and haw and, oh, I don't know, and usually it comes down to, yeah, they're like, I just don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to do this. That sounds risky, and I'm risk adverse and all this kind of thing. But I was quite good at getting into the mental side of things, and probably even more so after having had that mental health problem. Like I'd really then felt like I'd gone to the depths of despair, if you like, and that made me, I could relate to people more. Most people would say, oh, Scott's just always this kind of happy-go-lucky guy. And I probably was throughout the whole process. Everybody on the outside would have seen that. But on the inside, they didn't know. And the more that you talk to people, the more people kind of opened up. And that for me was, so the mental side of it was really powerful. It just became something that I doubled down on. And then the physical stuff, and in terms of how to change body and how to get fit and nutrition and that side of things came a bit later.
I think something that's really resonated with me about what you said was about, like, because you've been to a dark place yourself, say with mental health, I genuinely believe that as a coach, your superpower is your ability to communicate your own struggles to other people, to build that trust and connection, you know, just like Joe says. And I think really good coaches can articulate and have the difficult conversations with people in terms of like holding a mirror up, because they've had those difficult conversations with themselves. And it's really hard to take people into that mirror mindset and be like, look, this is what the facts are. You're doing this, you need to do this. And I think a lot of coaches who haven't necessarily been through, whether it's a physical transformation, battle with mental health, addiction, it doesn't matter what it is, a dark place, it's going to be hard to take people through that process themselves. Do you know what I mean?
So true, right? Because it's like, the reality is everybody can very quickly find out how to get fit, how to eat well, and how to Google how to improve my mental health, right? All of those things you can get in seconds on Google. but for whatever reason, people read them and then don't take any action off the back of it. As a coach, it's your superpower, to your words, it's them being able to probably see some pain in your own eyes and some hear that in your own voice. That's like, I've been there, I know what you're doing, and I can help you because I'm the evidence. And that can really kind of inspire people. And it is, that's the greatest.
Do you think it's different coaching men to women in a business perspective in terms of decision making, or even coaching from an athletic perspective? Because from my own personal opinion, I think guys obviously, well, a lot of guys, not all, you can't stereotype, I guess, but struggle to open up and show that vulnerability more than women perhaps would, from my experience.
Yeah. I think there is a bit of that at the top sort of level, if you like, but there's the whole kind of men do struggle at the top level to open up, right? Women are probably more willing to open up on the mass scale of averages, but I always think when you get down underneath that, right, and you get past the kind of stuff, the crusty out layer that they've got, is everybody's so different that we're so different, but yet we're so similar, right? And that's where I don't think the male-female thing comes in. Like, I think it's just
personality trait.
Yeah, right. And what trauma they've had or what goals they've got, right? I know some women that are mega alpha, right? They are like so driven, they are so focused that and they don't want to open up, right? They're that kind of alpha, which you might associate with them more with males. But equally, I know lots of males who'll be like, more than happy to open up and more than, maybe demonstrate the more female kind of traits. And that's the trick, is kind of trying to get underneath all of that and then be right. What is your trigger? Like, what is the story you've been telling to yourself? Because it doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl, right? You've told yourself a story and then put yourself a whole bunch of limitations in place off the back of that.
Protect yourself, essentially.
Totally. Yeah. And for me, that's the joy in coaching, like having that conversation with somebody and getting past all the fluffy stuff at the nonsense of the top, and then being like, actually, right, what is it that you really want? Like, I always have this question with new clients, and I always say, like, what do you want? And most people will say, I want happiness, and I want like, it'd be nice to have a nice house and a nice car and healthy kids and all this kind of stuff. And then I'm like, right, what else do you want? Once they've reeled it all off, what else do you want? And that's when they get more into, I always think they get more into feelings. First things they reel off tend to be like, not necessarily materialistic things, but they're
surface level
things all the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
What we're all really searching for is feelings, right? Like, we don't need the pecs and the six pack and the big arms. Like, we might think we want them. What we really want is the validation that I'm enough, that comes with when you look great, right? We want the feeling of, yeah, I am enough, right? And I am a good person or a good athlete. It's the feeling that we want. And that's what I'm kind of trying to get to. Yeah.
No, that's really interesting. So I know you've written this book. So with regards to, and because I haven't read the book, I haven't had a chance to read the book yet, but it's going to get that. It's on the add to the read list. Can you talk me through how you got to writing the book, mainly what it's about first, so people can get an understanding, but then how your experience as a coach has allowed you to articulate that into the book? Because I think it's fascinating. Like, I'd love to write a book, but it's getting around to doing something like that is insane.
Yeah, I guess, and that's the those points are bang on, right? Trying to do it is, I've got loads of ideas, and I've still got mega ideas about, I want to write all this, but I don't. It is time consuming, and there's definitely a thing called writer's block, right? That is there's loads of ideas, but none of it's going down on paper. But it all started right at the start of COVID. There was a guy, another coach I knew in the States, who was a speaker and had loads of speaking gigs lined up for the next, year or two. And then obviously COVID hit, and he was like, his whole business was gone in the click of a fingers. So he decided he was going to try and get into writing and authoring books. And he was saying to me, look, you're somebody who has worked a lot with athletes in the past and obviously worked a lot in business. Could you help here? I want to pull together like 10 or 15 of like the best experts in the world to everybody would write their own piece, and then we'd kind of come together and make sure that it all ties together. And it was a bit of a random one, and you're sitting there at the start of COVID, and I was like, what an incredible opportunity. And that's really how it came around. And the premise of it, a lot of it is, so it's about mindset tools for athletes. It's how to increase your performance as an athlete. But there's a lot of people in the book who are amazing technically. Like some of these guys, I'm like, if I've got you've got like the Olympic swimming coach for the Australian team, who are probably the best set of swimmers in the world. You've got nutritionalists for the NBA. It's amazing. So there's a lot of technical stuff, but mine was more about how you free your mind as an athlete. And I talk in the book about this Lego brick model, where the problem with athletes, or the challenge that athletes have, is they become extremely narrow-minded and focused on one thing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely right. And society is particularly good at, when you're an athlete, saying, this is it. You have to forget about everything else and focus purely on this. And I was saying, it's like building a block, and this applies to any life, to be honest. But if you imagine building a Lego block, a Lego tower, so you just put one block on top of the other. After you get to about 2 feet, it starts to kind of be a little bit unsafe. When it gets to 4 feet, right, it's teetering on the edge. And when you get to 6 foot, right, it's really hard just to get another brick on. And that's what an athlete's life is like a lot of the time, right? The slightest sway, right? The slightest dip in performance, the slightest thing that's not going right, it can all come tumbling down, or feel like it's tumbling down, because there's nothing at the side of it to support it. And that's where athletes need the other bricks, right? Another tower next to it that's like, whether that's another business interest, whether that's actually recognizing your family as one of these like support units, so that you can have different things in your life, so that when the performance dip inevitably comes, because it will, other things can start to take control, right? They can support it. And you can also be like, yeah, okay, so my 100 meters I've got slower by 0.01 over the season or something. But family's been great, right? And that business interest that we kicked off, that we invested in, that's gone amazing. So you start to have a much better balance in life. And that's what the greats have always done. Like if you look at the people who've actually sustained their performance over years and years and become the very best, like Michael Jordan, right? Business interests in
who I was thinking of.
Yeah, right. And then golf, right? He always had his outlet, was always scratch handicapper, amazing. Serena Williams, right? There you go. You've got her fitness, her fashion businesses has been a massive part of her. And then more lately, it's been her family stuff that she's kicked off. Like all the greatest of all times, that's how they've done it. The ones that have been a bit of a flash in the pan are the ones who build the tower, get really good because they're gifted and they're driven and whatever else, but they can't sustain it because the wobble, because there's nothing else in their life to kind of keep them going.
No, that's really interesting, because the thing you said about balance is something that I was discussing with a couple of my clients the other day, because I said to you at the start, in our program, we look at the person as a person identity, the physique and the profession. And so many times guys are going for that middle centerpiece, the physique. Yeah. They're not really paying attention to the person, the emotional capability, the relationships, the social life, and then the profession in terms of setting clear boundaries, working hours. and they might make a little bit of progress with the physique, but then when one of the other areas requires their energy and focus, the physique comes crashing down. And I often say to them, it's not about finding balance, but synergy, and learning that you can push hard in one area. You need to learn how to push hard in one area that doesn't reduce the quality of the other areas, as opposed to finding perfect balance. It's more about, okay, is this the time to push in that area? Cool. The other two areas, this is what we do to pull back. So it's not necessarily balance. I think it's good to have a focus, especially if you want to be at the top level, be able to know when the time is to push and when the time is to pull back.
So true. Yeah. That's it, right? Like, you just can't build, doesn't matter whether fitness is your game, whether business is your game, whether it's family. And I see that a lot with new dads, new mums and dads, right? Because all of us, their power block becomes the family, the kids thing. Everything else goes to shit, right? They're like, I've got to look after this child. It's the most important thing to me ever. And there's this emotional attachment that is beyond anything anybody's probably experienced in their life to date. So they kind of let everything else go. And it's like, God, that's so, it's overwhelming, right? And it's back to that thing of when the kid has a bad day, or you have a bad day with a kid, which is inevitably going to happen. If that's the only thing you've got going on in your life that's important to you, it's going to feel like your life's falling apart.
Yeah.
So you need these other things. And that's, for me, where different challenges and all these things come in. That I have a bad day at work, then that's okay, because I had a great run today, right? New PB did or something. I had a terrible run and I had a terrible day at work. Yeah, but I came home and the kids were all over me. We had a big wrestling game and it was loads of fun. Like, there's multiple different things going on in my life at any one time that fills me up. So 1 or 2 or 3 things can be off, but I'm always going to have something that's gone well.
Yeah.
And that keeps me on the straight and narrow and keeps me energized, to be honest.
100%. I think a lot of the problem I see with specifically like the guys that I work with is they're maybe getting, like my age, getting into the later 20s, and they're experiencing this transition where they're kind of like, a lot of time is going into that profession, and the person and the physique is taking a little bit of a hit, and we all wear these different identity caps, right? You know, the person, the physique profession, whatever it is, the dad, you know. And I think sometimes when people place such a large emphasis on the one hat, the one identity, that they lose who, and I spoke about this in a post on Monday, I think, like, you need to know who you are outside of just that one area, because like you said, if you stack those bricks higher and that comes crashing down and you're left with, okay, well, who am I outside of that channel?
Yeah.
That's a really dangerous place to be in, because you feel unfulfilled, you don't have any purpose. And I guess you could call it balance, but it's more just having an understanding of what success looks like in those different areas. Do you know what I mean?
That's exactly it. And I think that's where, even I find with people, they often don't actually know what the other areas of their life are. I have this tool called the Wheel of Life, and it's basically like 8 different segments to your life. Everything from, you've got your health and fitness, to your career, to your hobbies, to your family and friends, to your intimate relationship. Like, there's 8 different parts to your life. And when you put that in front of somebody and say, so score them all on a 1 to 10, I guarantee you most people will say they're doing really well in 1 or 2 areas and the rest is all to shit, right? And you're like, well, that's why you don't feel great. Because even if you know that you're ignoring these other areas, like your career's flying, which is great, right? In your late 20s, you've not got a lot of attachments, probably, you can just truly focus on that. You know that you've probably sacrificed your body for that, right? You know that you maybe sacrificed some time with your family and friends. And it's not until you put it in black and white for some people that they go, yeah, but that's not what I actually want to do. I've just been doing that because I've been on autopilot for the last year, 2, 3, however many. So it sometimes takes that almost like an intervention to say, here, you throw the bit of paper in their face and go, what do you think? And they're like, this is terrible, but now I know what I need to be focusing on the other things. Because and that was a moment for me as well, right? I remember thinking, geez, now I know what the other parts. I just always thought it was just career, or I knew there was like career, but health and family, for example, but I hadn't really thought of all the other aspects. And that kind of made me go, all right, you don't need to master all 8, that's probably more of a life goal, is to try and get all 8 to be as best as they possibly can. But you need to be thinking, I can't work on one 90% of the time.
Or at least
I'm gonna
focus
build
on
that.
bringing the other areas up a little bit that you're struggling with. I think
Totally.
that's something I noticed as a coach, specifically over the last few years when I've been getting into like deeper conversation with clients, is saying, people will come to you and they'll say, they want to improve their confidence. And I'm like, well, confidence isn't just like a one thing. Like, for example, you being able to put 8 areas in front of someone and go and rate yourself on these different 8 areas. I guarantee that you will be probably confident in one of those areas. So it's not that it's not that you don't have confidence, it's that you don't feel confident in a certain area. So what is it?
Yeah.
What's the area you don't feel confident in? And suddenly people are like, it's a bit more empowering for them to realize that it's not all shit.
Yeah, they might be confident. They are actually confident over here. They're just not confident over there, and being able to focus on one specific thing. And that's how you start to build it, right? Like, because confidence is it's just a muscle. It's like your bicep, right? If you want a big bicep, go and keep knocking out bicep curls, right? And you will get a big bicep.
Yeah.
But confidence is the same, right? Go and do things that you're not confident at, get better at it, and then you'll be like, oh, kind of feel a bit more confident about that, right? But
I think that leads perfectly into me asking you, okay, right, how did we now get confident enough to enter the Marathon des Sables, is it? The Sahara?
Sable, that's my best French accent.
For anyone that's familiar with it, Scott, can you explain to everyone what this race is?
Yeah, so they call this the toughest foot race in the world, right? So it's 6 marathons, 6 days across the Sahara Desert, fully self-supported. So you carry all your own equipment, your food and water and stuff is rationed because you're carrying it, and it's literally hell on earth.
Honestly, I don't. When I'd seen you talking about it and posted it in the group, I thought I need to find out what this actually is, like the details, the ins and outs of it. Because I was like, 6 marathons in 6 days, that's ridiculous. Okay, it's in the Sahara Desert, that's even worse. Okay, 2 people died the year before, that makes it very fucking scary. How do you prepare for something like that? What is the preparation process for that? Because there's no amount of running in heat that can prepare you for that. I live in Spain. I did my first marathon in May, the Leeds Marathon, and I was training out here, and it was getting probably like mid-20s when I was doing like 30k runs, right? And I got back to Leeds. It was hot for the day, but I was okay in that. And I was thinking, but even still, this is intense. So how do you prepare for something like
that? Well, I live in Edinburgh, right? So and because the race is in May, end of April, it sort of falls over the end of April, beginning of May. Most of my training was through the Scottish winter, right? Like there's nothing, it's not ideal. But to be honest, so much of this is just, it's in your head, right? Like you need to get the miles in the legs. So I probably started training properly for it in the October, November before, so 6-7 months before.
What had you done event-wise prior to this, like in terms of endurance?
So, well, here's a really good example of what we were talking about earlier, right? So the speed at what you can go at. So I decided I wanted to do an Ironman, right? Which is ridiculous because for me, that felt like the toughest thing in the world at the time. And I had arthritis in my hip, so I couldn't cycle. Every time I got on a bike, I'd last like 3k and my hip would be burning. I had a shoulder injury, so trying to go swimming was nigh on impossible. And then running was usually hampered by the hip. arthritis as well. So I was kind of, cut a long story short on that. Eventually I managed to get that better and I said to Joe, I'm going to try a half Ironman because that sounds really hard, right? So you've got 1.9K swim, you've got 90K on the bike, and then you've got a half marathon to run. So I went really short on that. I think we went 2 months, and I'd gone from I was in the gym, but I wasn't cardio fit, if you like, right? I wasn't doing a lot of miles. I hadn't swam since I was a teenager, going to swim lessons at school probably, other than bobbing around in a pool on holiday. Hadn't been on a bike since I did a paper round, and I did run 10, 15Ks maybe once a week or something. But in a 2-month period, at the start of December, I said to him, I'm just going to hit this really hard in December, try and get as many miles as I can, and let's see where we are at the end of January, because I'm going on a stag do and it needs to be done before then. And I did a half Ironman and was like, oh, that was okay. I managed that. So that would be in January. And then I said to him, let's try a full one. And he said, and COVID was just starting to open up. So this would be 2 years ago. And he said, right, find one that you want to do. So I Googled what's the hardest one in the world. And he said Lanzarote. And I went, oh, well, that's cool because that's kind of close, but shit, like I can't do the hardest one in the world. It's like 9,000 feet of climbing on so you're 3.9K swim. So you're in the ocean. So it's all waves and yuck. You're then 180K on the bike and it's up 9,000 feet of Lanzarote volcanoes.
Incline gradient, like. Oh.
Yeah, horrible. And then it was a marathon when you come off the bike. So you're like, what? Yeah, it wasn't even, but Joe had done it, right? Now, Joe is probably one of these guys who's like a gifted athlete, right? He just pro footballer, swimmer, all these kind of things, like, and I'm not that at all. And I've still got a corporate job, a coaching business, I've got kids, I've got a property business, all these other things. So it's not like I've got loads of time to do stuff, but once I'd verbally told people I'm going to do this, it was like, oh shit, I can't back out now.
That's it.
So I did the full Ironman. Yeah, so I did the full Ironman in May. And again, that was like, I'd never run a marathon before I did the Ironman. So my first marathon was on the day of the Ironman. But doing that gave me this incredible amount of confidence that I could do these things, and that really shifted my mindset to another level.
Yeah.
So that was in May last year, and then I thought it'd be really cool to try and run 100 kilometers, do an ultra.
Okay.
So I did that in August, and I was like, Christ, I can run. I think I did 106K or something in 24 hours, and I was like, that's done that, right? What's next? And then as a kid, I remember seeing and hearing about this race that was Marathon des Sables, 6 marathon, 6, and I remember thinking like they must be like Captain America or something, those guys. And when I Googled what is the hardest race in the world, this kept coming up, and I was like, I mean, if I completed that, how would I feel? I was like, it would be the most incredible feeling ever.
Yeah.
And I don't even know. I remember like humming and hawing about it with my wife, and she was like, oh my God, would you just book the bloody thing? Like, I was like, man, I don't know, it's like, timing's not great. It's a lot of training and it's a lot of money. And I was trying to kind of come in and out of excuses with it. And then eventually she said to me, can you die doing it? And I remember at the time saying no, and thinking, you shouldn't have said that because you can. But I said no, and she went, well, just go and book it. And I booked it that night. I just went, right, done, fine. Voice note to Joe. Joe, I need a training plan for Marathon des Sables. He was like, what the fuck? How are we going to do this? But in fairness, he was also like amazing, right? Because and in fairness to Joe as well, he said to me, look, I might not be the right guy for this. He's like, I haven't done this before, and it's so I want to be open with you. And I was like, mate, I want you, right? Like, it was a bit of a partnership by this point. I was like, there's nobody else I want to do this with. It won't be the same. So he was like, right, cool, let's go. Yeah. So that was kind of the journey to get there, I guess. And then training wise, like, what do you do for it, right? I mean, it's all just running an insane amount. I peaked out about 110K a week. So there was a period running up to it for a couple of months where I was pretty much doing like a marathon every week.
Were you doing it weighted with like a rucksack?
Yeah, rucksack on, and I'd do it in the hills. So everything was like, I think everything was between like 3,000 and 5,000 feet of climbing.
Anything you can do to make it harder, you were doing it basically.
Yeah, basically. But this is where I kind of simplify, and it's why I always think it's so important to have a coach and to have somebody. One, because then I don't have to think about it and be planning, right? How many should I do and what should we, all that kind of thing. And two, he holds me accountable, right? Like, I feel bad. I don't feel bad for myself when I miss a training session. I'm generally all right. I feel bad for Joe.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to tell Joe that I missed one.
The same.
Yeah. So, and that's this mad thing, which is a whole other piece where people will say, if you're not going to do it for yourself, then don't do it, right? You've got to do it for yourself. Like, that is the biggest lot of bullshit ever.
Everyone will always happily let themselves down.
Totally. I will do more for another person than I'll ever do for myself. And most people are like that.
Why charities exist, right? You do it, you run for charity, like
yeah,
accountable. Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Exactly. So, and that was like, and again, you talk a lot about identity, which is so spot on, right? Your identity has to become, you have to change, almost change your identity to be the person that does this.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I always remember saying to myself at one point, it was really busy that day. It was a Tuesday, and I had scheduled out my training, right? I was quite rigid in terms of, because of the volume of time, I'd block it in the diary. And I said, I've got to run a marathon Tuesday, like between 11 and 3 or something like that. I'm like, I'm doing all these calls and I'm trying to do this and I'm trying to do that. And I knew I had to be back because the kids were getting out of school. And I was like, oh my God. And I've got to fit a marathon in amongst all of this. I was like, if I can do all this, have the calls, pick up the kids, run a marathon, sort tea, whatever it was, how fucking good is that going to feel?
Superman.
Like, right? I didn't have the confidence necessarily that I could do it. I didn't have the facts that I could do it because I'd never done it. I was just like, might as well try, right? Yeah. Make it happen. So, and then obviously over the course of that 6 months, training ramps up. You probably do about 110K a week at its max. And then as you get closer to the time, I spent quite a bit of time in a heat chamber at the university in Edinburgh, where you just get locked in this windowless cell with a treadmill. There's a treadmill, a bike, and a row machine, and they just crank up the heat. You've got all your clothes on, right? All your race gear on, and just battering out miles on a treadmill, and as they crank up the heat each day. So
it's amazing.
Yeah, it's tough going that.
Insane. I mean, talk me through the event itself. Like once you got started, how were you feeling? The start, the middle, what was going through your head when you were doing it?
Yeah, I think so. The day we arrived in the desert, you're on a bus, and we literally went into a sandstorm. It was a sandstorm, as in, like, you can't see 15 foot in front of you. This is just like a blizzard. Yeah, and you're like, oh my God, like, and in some ways everybody's kind of excited, like, yeah, we're getting a whole experience here, and we're in the middle of the Sahara, and this is cool. But the weird thing was it was quite cool. It was like, I say quite cool, like maybe mid to high 20s, right? which is not what I was expecting in the Sahara, right? Everybody was like, it's going to be in the 40s at least. And so that night we sat down, and you stay in the same, they've got like a bivouac, which is, imagine 4 sticks, and I mean literally sticks they've broken off a tree, with a blanket over the top, just to keep you out of the shade, and you sleep on the ground.
It's cold at
So
night.
you're in with,
Does it get cold?
normally, yes. For the week we were there was none of that. That day it was, as I say, quite cool. And we were sitting in the bivouac, and you're meeting the other guys that you're in. So you sleep with the same 6 people every night, depending on who survives after each night, if you like, or after each day. Because if you don't, survives maybe a bit stronger. If you finish the day, then you get to stay. If you don't finish, then it's like you're out, right? You don't even get let back into the tended part. And I was like, I'm not gonna lie here, guys. If it's like this temperature, I'm gonna be a bit gutted. I don't want to do this race the year that it's the easiest ever, right? It's cool. We randomly got this cool sort of 25, 28 degrees or something. And we were all of the same opinion, right? We were like, it better fucking hot up tomorrow. And then, oh my days, like, we do, I mean, for the course of the week. So on record, it's the highest average temperature that week that they've ever had on the race.
Yeah, perfect. Just what you wanted.
It was exactly what I wanted, but by that point I was cursing myself, right? So it was well over 50 on quite a few of the days. So the first day you get there, and you're on the start line, and everybody's nervous, right? You're like looking around you, and you're eyeing people up, going, they look like a runner, right? You know, they're stringy and focused, and you're like, am I ready? And I wasn't necessarily comparing myself to other people, but I was like, am I ready to run through a desert, right? And in the heat, right? And basically what happened was, so we were together as a 6, and we said, look, we'll all just do our own thing, right? And off we went. And we cracked on. The first half marathon was, generally speaking, all right. It was a struggle. Like, I was like, oh my God, this is hot. And I was a lot slower than what I thought it was going to be, because your heart rate just shoots up in that heat. And I knew that your core body temperature, like the scientists in the heat chamber had said, your core body temperature for you is normally 36.5. If you go above 2 degrees, you're in the danger zone, and you're basically, parts of your body will start to shut down to try and cool you down. So don't go above that. Now, in the heat chamber, you've got somebody like with a thermometer in your ear every 5 minutes telling you what you're at. Out there, like, there's nothing. You're just going by how do I feel? So after the first half, I was like, okay, right, I'm going to maybe put a bit of pace down here and get going. And then next thing I know, I don't know where about in this race it was somewhere in the second half, I just felt like my peripheral vision just started to go fuzzy. I could see in front of me, but I couldn't see the peripheral stuff. And I was like, that's a bit weird. And then I felt like somebody lifted my head off my shoulders.
Wow.
And poured
experience.
bucket. Yeah, it felt like from the neck down, somebody poured this like freezing cold water into me. And I remember thinking, oh, that's amazing. And I actually looked at my arms, and I had goosebumps. And I was like, oh, I mean, that's amazing. I don't know if that's good. And then next thing I know, I'm like flat down in the sand, just face planting. And I'm like waking up going, what the fuck was that? And I just blacked out, right? The heat had just got too much. Something in my body had decided we need to switch some stuff off, and that was it. And you get up and you're like, what do I do? Like, I've never blacked out in my life, right? Like, so you kind of get up and almost style it out, right? You're like, let's just run again and see what happens.
Is there no
happened again?
Kind of following you?
There's medics, but they're not it's not like a marathon or, it's not
Yeah.
like a Ironman or whatever, where there's fans lining
Yeah,
that,
of
you're
course.
just in the desert, there's no markings, or there's very limited maybe markings. You're kind of just following somebody, hopefully in front of you, that you've got a guidebook and a navigation and a compass and stuff to navigate your way through the desert, but you're kind of just going on where you think the other person's going that's in front of you. God knows how the person at the front actually figures out, but
Wow.
it's a bit odd like that. So the second time, blacked out, hit the deck and was like, oh, this is not good. Like, and a bit of guilt started to creep in. Because the one thing that I'd promised Emma in particular, my wife, and to be fair, a lot of friends, was whatever you do, don't push yourself too far. Know where your limit is. And I was like, I think that might be my limit. Like, blacking out. I felt okay. Like, I felt like I could run. I was just like, keep having these blackouts. And then I got to within about 2K of the end. And basically what happens is you're quite high up. You climb up this, what they call a jebel, which is like a massive sand mountain. And you can see down at in a couple of 2 or 3 kilometers, you could see this like finish line. Now, every day of the week and twice on Sundays, when I've got 2 or 3K to go, I'll find the gear to get me there. Like, I love that part of it. But on this day, I was like, if I keep running, I'm going to face plant again, right? And some of the desert is really, really sandy. That's horrible soft sand that saps every ounce of energy out of you. Some of it's quite hard. Like, some of it's very rocky. And if you fall, like, there's people constantly running about, massive gashes in their face and their legs and their arms, right? Because they've fallen. And I guess because there's never been any water in the desert. So to like smooth, yeah, like, and what's that, erosion or something? I should know more because I studied geology at uni, but where they smooth rocks, right? There's never been any water. So everything's very sharp and jagged. And I could see this medic kind of guy, and I was like, I just need to, I need to stop. Like, otherwise I'm gonna, I don't know. I was worried about what I was gonna do to myself from a kind of long-term health problem. So I stopped. You're rationed with water, so I was out of water by this point, and I was like, oh, it's fucking scary when you're in the desert with no water. But I managed to, I could feel my core body temperature starting to come down. And then I don't even know if I don't actually remember crossing the line now that I think about it. I don't remember that first day crossing the line. I just remember thinking that was the hardest day of my life. Like, that I felt like I was on the edge of my limit the whole time. And, if you've done a marathon, right, you'll know, or any sort of run, right? It doesn't matter how far it is, as long as you're near your limit, you can stay there for a little bit, and then eventually you have to come back down. But this felt like I was on it for, like, I don't know how long that day is, maybe 6-7 hours it takes to do marathons in the desert. Like, it just felt like I was constantly on the edge, and that was scary. Yeah, and then you get back to the like bivouac, and it was such a good crowd. I had the guys in the tent were proper, just really good guys. And I got there, was a couple of them were back already, and then normally you'd expect everyone to be like, "Wow, that was really hard, but wow, we done it," and all this. There is like none of that. There's just about an hour of nobody talking and everybody lying in a crumpled mess trying to figure out how to cool their core body temperature down. It's the weirdest thing, and it's horrible, because you literally feel like every part of your body is burning up, and it's a feeling I've never had before, like that level of, yeah. and you know there's no way to cool yourself down, right? It's not like you can go, oh, it's going to be fine because I'll get into my bedroom and there's aircon or a fan or something. You're just lying in a baking desert. I think that day it was about 48, 49 degrees or something. So it's, yeah, it's a slog, right?
And then 5 more days of the same, right?
Totally. So you do another day 2's another one, day 3's another one, day 4 is a ultra marathon. So that's like 90k, 50 odd miles, and it's, you know, a double marathon in a bit. That's the hardest day of my life by a country mile. Like it's hard to describe just how savage that is.
How did you keep yourself going? Now, I've read something about you were kind of talking about this before, but like when you're in that moment on day 5, you've done 4 ultras, pretty much. You're in the Sahara Desert, it's 50 degrees. How do you keep pulling yourself forward to keep going for that distance mentally?
Yeah, there's so many, I guess, things that I did, right? Because things never work for the ultra takes 23 hours, right? So it's not like you can just do something and it then works for 23 hours. You're constantly trying a different thing. For me, there's a couple of things that I always think about. One is I always think of like a joystick, like for a plane or whatever. And I'm constantly leaning into, when you talk about identity and things, it's like, who am I trying to be in any one moment? So different things that I have to lean into, like the first one will be like glory, right? So who do I want to be? I want to be that guy crossing the line. I want to see all the like screaming and the shouting and wow, you're fucking amazing, blah, right? Like the adrenaline that comes with that. So I immerse myself, like I physically kind of think about it as leaning forward into glory. And I always sit in a cinema in my head. So I'm like, I'll start a process of sitting in the cinema, watching something on screen. And it usually starts as a photo. And it'll be me like crossing the line, like, yeah. And then I kind of zoom into the photo and become the character in the film. And I layer in all this different information. So this is kind of, I'm trying to mentally walk myself through this process, and I'll be like, right, what's the noise that you can hear around you? And I can hear like one of my mates, you know, and it's not like just mates. It's like I can hear my mate sigh, or I can hear my mate like Dave shouting, "You're the fucking man, you've got this." Like and it's their voice. So I'm really trying to think about what specifically is it about their voice. And then I'm looking at who's there, and I'm trying to pick out specific faces that I'd want to be there. Again, actual friends. And I'm looking at, like, if I was looking at you, I'm like, where's the crease in his eye? Where's the stubble on his face? Like, I'm trying to immerse myself in how you're looking at that moment. And what's the smell, right? Going through all the different senses.
Yeah.
The smell, it's like that dusty desert. And what can I feel? And I'm like, I can feel like the sweat dripping down, this bead of sweat going down the back of my neck. And then I'm like, right, and what else is going on? I'm like, my wife's there and she's like crying because she's so proud, and I can see the tears. And I like immerse myself so that moment feels so real and it lasts forever, right? I can stay in that sort of moment for probably 40 minutes, maybe up to an hour, of just not even replaying it, just adding in something else. Like, actually, what's my wife wearing? Where's the hair on my friend's face? Like,
it's almost like a distraction technique, isn't it? To stop yourself from feeling what you're actually feeling in the present moment.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, before I did my marathon, I was watching a lot of like David Goggins stuff. You know, he's just like, I can go hard, just being a pussy, just run, And I quite often just in my runs up to that was just listening to podcasts like of him talking. And like some of the things he was saying is like, just do whatever you have to do mentally to take your thought process away from being present, you know, whether it's counting numbers, whether it's, you know, counting sheep jumping over a turnstile, or, you know, imagining that you're in some happy place, and anything you can do to kind of distract yourself and just find different ways to do that. Like you said, get vivid on all the senses of being in the park, being in a happy place with your family. And that's mental. That's actually insane.
Yeah. And that's where I do have this joystick thing where I'm like, because sometimes the glory doesn't work. I'm like, I just can't get into it. So I need to lean into like pain. And my pain is always like, it's pretty much always the same thing. Like the thought of my kids getting kidnapped. Right. And it's a horrible thing to go into, but I have this
the adrenaline, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I go into they're in the transit van. I'm chasing the transit van. They're screaming. My wife's crying, and it's upsetting. And a lot of the time I can feel myself actually get
welling up a bit.
I'm welling up. Like I can feel the lump in my throat, but that's almost good in the sense that, because then the pain in my legs and everywhere else is gone, right? It's all my throat and my eyes. The key with pain is to never let it boil over. As soon as you let that tear go, that's when you've lost the energy. So it's like, which is why why crying is good for you, right? Because it's like there's this pent up energy coming in you, and then a lot of people try and suppress it, right? So the energy stays inside, and that's why it feels hard. But if you let the tears out and let it all go, that's where the relief comes from. So when you're doing this, like when I'm running, I never let the tears flow. It's like I've got to hold on to them. Because I need that energy to stay inside me. I don't want that to release. So yeah, sometimes it's pain, sometimes it's glory, sometimes it's like gratitude. So it's like, what thing can I, and it's kind of like being in the park. For me, it's often things like taking the kids to bed and feeling their skin on my skin, like really trying to think about
detail.
What does that feel like? You know, the warmth of their skin. Or if I'm out with my mates and I'm like, we're having a beer, and how heavy does the pint glass feel? Is it smooth, or is it one of those ones that's got like a stamp on the side of it? Or is it a can?
What you said about, say, like not letting your coach down as well, it's like that gratitude of people putting the time and support into you type thing as well, isn't it? I guess that could come under the same thing. Because I know what you mean by that. Because on my mile 18 in that marathon, I hit like what you call Pool Bank in Leeds, which is like that, which is a horrible place to put 3 miles.
I know where you are.
And then I remember being on that, and I was just like thinking about everyone that had donated and things like, you know, anything that you can just be grateful for to pull you through those really tough bits. Cleared the hill, but then I walked for a bit at the top of the hill and I just couldn't get going again. Because when once you slow down and then you can't speed up again, it was
it's horrible.
Another analogy for that bit of the race, but no, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's amazing. How did you feel when you finished?
In a weird way, there's, you know, when you cross the line, it's amazing, right? It's like just relief more than anything, right? Just the thought of, I'm never going to have to run again if I don't want to. I'm never going to have to experience this heat, albeit you've still got another night in the desert. But I think it probably took about a week till the happiness and the
reality, I guess,
the pride, kicked in, because you're so exhausted, right? Like you're probably burning anywhere between 7,000 to 9,000 calories a day, but you're only eating 2,500 to 3,000. You're dehydrated. You've just been running marathon after marathon, so your energy levels are really low. I think something I'd learned though from when I did Ironman was there's the initial high, and then there's a low that comes after these things, right? Olympic athletes will talk about it all the time, right? It's like, how good did it feel? It was like 3 seconds that it lasts, the feeling of getting the gold medal. And then it's like, what's next? Oh, I could have done this better. So I was very conscious of that. So I was very aware of everything that was going on around me in terms of absorbing that energy and what do I want to remember? What do I want to keep? What do I want to, again, smells, tastes, sounds, all these things, and really focusing on trying to stay proud and stay happy for as long as I can. And I found that well, you don't maybe get the high that I got from an Ironman because the exhaustion level was so high that you're struggling to walk for some of it. I felt like I managed to maintain the happiness and the pride and the everything that came with it for much longer. So it was great. It's the best thing, to be honest, is when you finish, they give you a 250 ml bottle of Coke, and it's from it's cold, right? It's the only cold thing you've had for 10 days. And it's not even Coca-Cola. It's like some dodgy Moroccan local brand. But it's like probably one of the best things I've ever tasted in my life. I was like, yeah. And again, it's just little things like that, like trying to be sipping it and being like, oh my God, like I forgot what coldness feels like on my tongue and the bubbles on my cheeks and the flavor. Like, I haven't had anything with flavor for 10 days. Like, it's yeah. So it's just amazing. But as I said to you kind of at the start there's a bit of trauma that I found came. Like I felt a lot of guilt about how hard I'd pushed myself and how close to the edge I'd come. I'd made a decision. I wrote down in my journal. I did write while I was away, and I had to write down after that first day how hard am I gonna push myself to complete this. And because I kept having that thought, oh my God, I'm gonna have to push myself to the edge, and which means I'm not doing what I said to my wife, which was I will not push myself beyond the edge. But once I wrote it down, I was like, no, Jesus Christ, Scott, I'm not paying the price of my life to complete this, right? And that first night, there was a guy who same age as me, I think, really experienced ultramarathon, cardiac arrest, like dead for 7 minutes.
Wow.
As I was walking, I was like, what the hell's happening there? And you're like, yeah, guys. And you just start to realize, like, this isn't worth that. But it's easy to get lost in your own head.
But how do you draw the line and know truly what is the edge? Because it's like you push yourself, you tell yourself a story like, no, enough's enough. But then you're like, actually, is this enough?
Yeah, and it's a really fine line. I think for me, I started to learn that when my peripheral vision started to go funny, that was where I was too close to the edge, and I would stop, and I'd try and find some shade if there was a shade, or if I had enough water, I'd try and pour some water on me to like the back of my neck to cool me down. Kind of started noticing little triggers. Like if I started to feel cold, I knew that was a particularly bad sign. So, and that I got quite good at managing that over the course of the week. But yeah, until I wrote it down and said and this is, I say this to anybody, right? When you're stuck in your own head, just write down everything that you're thinking about, and you'll start to make some more sense of it. And I was like, I am not going to push myself beyond. I'm not going to risk my life here, right? I've got wife and kids, and I've got too much to lose. And that helped me ease some of that guilt and some of that sort of fear of what I might do to myself, and just clarify where I wrote down after it, right? Peripheral vision, feeling cold, how are you going to handle it? stay with us. One of the guys, Mark, he was about the only one who hadn't had that over the course of the first day. So I was like, stay with Mark. He's obviously got his pace sorted out. Yeah, the advice there is write stuff down. Don't get stuck in your own head because it's a scary place.
That's amazing. Honestly, mate, it's unbelievable what you did. I think it's one of them. It's like two things that spring to mind for me is I've got quite a lot of friends who are fighters, and there's that element of like the uncertainty of, like anything could happen at any time in any fight. And there's something one of them said to me once that actually kind of, for people who aren't willing or haven't put themselves in those kind of environments, it's like, if you've not been close to experiencing death, have you truly experienced life type thing? Do you know what I mean? Like, which is a crazy way to look at it, but it's like, I understand that kind of mentality, especially if you've been close to something that's life-threatening, then you have that like almost addiction to the adrenaline. And the other one is just about finding that fine balance of like knowing when enough is enough. And it's like, when do you draw that line? And I think it just changes to every single person. And it's the same with any goal. It's like, for me in my head, before I did the marathon, I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. And I actually kind of wrote down, like you've kind of recommended, is like, okay, well, at least write down what's the worst case scenario. And it's like, okay, worst case scenario for me is I have to stop.
Yeah.
So what? I could try it again. And that actually took a lot of pressure off me mentally to then just be like, okay, I can stop. And even if that meant walking for a bit and then carry on, I was like, that's not the be all end all. So it's like having those two opposite ends of the spectrum of like taking away the pressure, but then also saying like, okay, you can go further than you think.
Yeah, that's so true, and you have to write it down. Obviously, you have to write it down with a paper and pen, because when you do it with paper and pen, it forces your brain to slow down. When you're typing on your phone or your computer, you can type at a rapid rate of knots, so you don't process the thought properly. Yeah. Whereas when you've got a pen and paper, you're like, right, I need to slow down here because I can't write that fast. And that just, it's a brain dump, right? It just gets all the nonsense out of your head. It makes all the difference. And it is, like you said there, it's a lot about distraction techniques, and it's a lot about the questions you ask yourself as well. Like, I wrote down, one of the last things I wrote in my journal was, you never asked yourself, how am I going to complete this? Which is like the obvious question to ask every day, is like, oh my God, because every day they'd be like, look, it's hotter tomorrow and it's harder, right? Just, that's how we do it. And the obvious question is, how do I do that?
Yeah.
But as soon as you ask yourself the question of how,
creates that doubt.
It's like, yeah, right. It's like more dreams have been killed because people ask themselves how too quickly. They come up with something, they're like, oh, I'm so excited, I'm gonna get myself blah 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 fit and strong and rich and healthy and whatever else. And then they go, how? And all that excitement just goes,
like stay focused on the end result, like keep romanticizing about the end goal type thing. Just keep, yeah.
I have a thing with 6 weeks. I'm like, never ask yourself how you're going to do it for 6 weeks. Just enjoy the idea that might be the life that you lead, or the thing. And if you can hold on to that for 6 weeks, it kind of ingrains it into you. And then you can start to try and figure out the how. Because if you ask, it's the age-old analogy is like, if you're overweight, you can ask yourself, why am I so fat, right? And it's a rubbish question, because you're just going to come up with answers that say, because you're big boned, you're a greedy bastard, you spend too much on donuts. Totally. Whereas if you ask yourself a question of, how could I lose weight and have some fun while doing it, you get a whole different set of answers and a whole different experience of being overweight at that point.
Well, like say, how would life be better if you were X type thing, because they paint that picture themselves.
Exactly. So you've got to be so conscious of these questions that you're asking yourself in these moments. The same with the old one, especially in the endurance world, is how much do you want this? Every time I ask myself that when I'm knackered, I'm like, I don't. I don't want this. I don't need it. I don't want it. I'm out. But it's like, right, okay. So, can you keep putting one foot in front of the other? Yeah, I probably can. Right, that's it. Stop questions. Now go to distraction. Go to glory. Go to gratitude. Go to pain. Go to whatever it is that you need. Get back on that joystick kind of mentality.
That's something that really helped me was can you literally take another step? Can you put one more foot forward? I was like, yes. And then again, and then again. And you just build that momentum back up, don't you? And you're like, okay, I'm in motion now again, like it's going.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So I'm aware we've been talking for a while now, so I'll round this up with 3 questions that I wanted to ask you. Well, first one with regards to almost like gold medal syndrome. Once the bar and achievement's been so high, what's next for you in terms of, where do you go from here?
It's funny because I suppose the thinking behind the question is always because people assume that you need to go higher. And for me, well, the reality is there's nowhere higher, right? There's pretty much no race that's harder than that. So for me, it's more about what feels like a challenge and what feels like it might be enjoyable. So there's a few different things.
Could almost link that back to what we were talking about. It's like the physique side of stuff, that tower's been not ticked off, but done. It's like, how do we build a bigger base now in the other areas?
Exactly. So there's kind of, at the moment I'm going through like and I've got a strength phase, right? I'm like, I need to get stronger, right? I neglected the weights room for too long because of the running. So I'll go through a period of putting some more muscle back on and building that strength. And then now starting to look at other things, like there's similar races that go through like the Arctic Circle. There's stuff that's through the Amazon jungle. There's talk of world record attempts because you then find yourself in this network of people who are like, I know a guy who's trying to do, the first man to row across the Indian Ocean from here to A to B. And I'm like, yeah. And
you're like essentially type stuff.
Yeah. But all of a sudden you're in the conversation, right? And I'm like, I've never been in this room before. Who are these people?
And that's an exciting place to be, right?
Amazing. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure what it is. We're trying to nail it down, me and a few others, again, because you've met such a good group of people. You kind of want to do similar things with the same people, because you're like, I really enjoyed that. So it'll be big and it'll be difficult, but it'll be it's just an exciting time right now, to be honest.
I think it is great when you've achieved something so big like that for yourself, and you just think about, like, it's almost a breath of fresh air that you can now explore different avenues as well. It's a place to be.
Totally. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that.
You've got confidence to do. Now it's like, well, I said it before, what I've realized is the absolute minimum that I'm capable of is the hardest thing in the world. So confidence is
sky's the limit. Sky's now the limit.
Yeah, totally.
No, that's a really cool mindset to have. The minimum of capable of is the hardest thing in the world. That's insane. Okay, next question is non-really endurance or training related, but going back to your background. What would you recommend to anyone in, say, the corporate world or in any job they feel unfulfilled? How do they make a switch? Or what advice would you give for someone who feels that they're successful, but they're not fulfilled? I guess that's a better question.
Yeah, I think the reason people get unfulfilled is because they typically, once you figure out how to achieve things, particularly in the corporate world, it's a bit of a science, right? You kind of becomes a bit of I know how to be successful. I do this, and this, and one way or another, I'll eventually get there. Fulfillment is a bit more of an art form. It's not quite so tangible in that way. And it's back to writing it down. Like, don't fall into the trap of thinking I need to change jobs to get fulfilled. You need to write down what a fulfilled life looks like for you.
That's
Because
amazing.
it might not be the job. It's what does fulfillment look like? And then you can figure out what needs to change in your life. Yeah.
No, that's
Take the time.
awesome. That's really interesting, that angle you've gone, because it's like, I think what a lot of people think is like moving or changing is the solution, when actually, instead of looking externally, like looking internally and what are my values and beliefs. And like you said, the validation side of things that we discussed earlier might be a huge thing. And if you don't feel like you're being validated in your workplace, and I spoke to one of my clients about this, it's like, your boss might just not know that you really appreciate positive and constructive feedback and a pat on the back when you've done something right? And some people just want status and feel validated. Can you now communicate that to your work colleagues, where they give you the feedback when you've done a good job? Suddenly you feel like, okay, I'm valued at work, and think that dynamic changes. That's a really, really, really interesting flip and insight that I'd not thought of. I'd spoken about it with someone, but not necessarily thought about it in that light, which is awesome, mate. Thank you. And finally, best advice for building mental resilience. I know we've touched on this a little bit with regards to like techniques, but
I think, first of all, understand how mental resilience is built. And it's built by doing hard things and realizing that you can do it. Now, you don't have to run 6 marathons in 6 days across the Sahara Desert, but you do need to do the thing that you're saying, I'm not mentally resilient enough to deliver that presentation, or to ask that girl out for a date, or the only way you're going to get resilient is by doing that thing and realizing it's not as bad as it seems, right? And the more you do it, the more resilient you'll get. You're not going to get it from scrolling through Instagram and reading about what mental resilience is. You're not going to get it from reading a book. You're not going to get it from watching a video on YouTube. You're going to get it from doing the thing that you're not resilient about.
Yeah. Fair enough. Awesome. Yeah. Scott, really appreciate your time, mate. Final thing for you to plug your stuff. Where can people find you on social media, Instagram handle, and where can they get the book?
Instagram, it's at Scott Mac Coaching. Facebook, it's the same, Scott Mac Coaching. Mac is an MAC. The book is on my Insta profile, or you can get it on Amazon. Excellent.
Amazing, mate. Thank you for coming on.